Yes. But I saw in your list of questions, one of the things is like, what do people get wrong the most?
Yeah.
They don't do their research.
Yeah.
They don't do their research. They don't understand their customer. They don't. And I can tell you a couple things.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Persuasion Play podcast. My name is Jeffrey Thomas, and I write about persuasion, motivation, influence, and how to shape your minds, and the minds of those around you. Today, I have a very special guest. I'm excited to welcome Kevin Halbert, son of a famous Gary Halbert. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Well, I don't want to waste too much time, so let's dive right in. Thanks for joining me. Can you tell us a bit about growing up as a Halbert? What's that all about?
Um, Growing up as a Halbert. Yeah, I mean, I would say that growing up, as a kid, I was just we pretty much had a normal kind of life until about um I remember us living in this little white house by a creek, and we just looked like Americana and stuff like that. But when it came to and then all of a sudden my dad hit it big and made a lot of money, and then all of a sudden our life was seriously upgraded. Yeah, we moved into a giant, newly built two-story home. I remember we used to whenever we flew anywhere, this it was different back then. Boeing had just come out with the 747, and everywhere we flew first class. So and when you're a kid, like, when you're like 6 years old or whatever, economy looks like a giant seat. So first class being in leather seats with these old school stethoscope headphones, because they just had tubes that went into the handle, and there was speakers in the handle of the thing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And my dad had a Miami condo in Fort Lauderdale and multiple cars. We had he bought a 55 T-Bird Mustang that used to be owned by Tommy Smothers. But if you've read The Dark Side of Success, you can see all the stuff that went down because of having money. Whether it was street thugs or government thugs. People don't understand that people with money have like they have a different set of problems, and it becomes a whole other job. But as far as being a Gary Halbert, it was an adventure. My dad was not a very um, he didn't mind being offensive or crass, or he didn't play by anybody else's rules. And
And suck.
yeah, and the thing was is that um he spent his life, like, my mom said she married my dad because he could convince anybody to do anything. And I watched it my whole life. If he wanted something from you, he was going to get it from you, and he was going to figure out what your weakness was, and he was going to dangle it in front of you until he got what he wanted. And he was very effective at that. But it made him a 24/7, like every moment he was awake, he was thinking about persuasion. It was not like, I think the reason some people make a lot of money in this world is because they actually have an obsessive love for something everyone else absolutely hates. And when you do that, when you have that kind of passion for something, you're the best, and you're the only game in town. And then, you can do very well. And so, be obsessed with persuasion and conversion and selling and all that other stuff. That was not something like he clocked in at 9 a.m. time to start thinking marketing. No, his eyes were open. He was thinking marketing. I mean, whether we were in the car constantly, driving down the road, all he was just thinking was human psychology, persuasion, marketing constantly. And the thing was, it had nothing to do with whether or not it was something he had to sell. It could be anything. It could be getting a librarian to give him a book that's, in the reference section only. I remember walking into we don't have to go too long because you have a lot of questions. But I remember okay, back in the day, maybe you're too young to know, but back in the day, there were several monopolies. One was Standard Oil, but the other one was Ma Bell. And so when you wanted something from the phone company, they were the only game in town. So there was no, oh, I'll lose your business. You're going to go with someone else. And they had the attitude that you had nowhere else to go. So you had better. And my dad, we had just gotten, he had the first pocket calculator in the world. He had all the gadgets and toys. But one of the things I remember back in 72 or 73, he had the first answering machine,
Mhm.
but he also, when we moved to Los Angeles, he got a different answering machine, but it needed that little splitter jack that
Oh,
turns one phone line into two. And when you went into Ma Bell, I remember this clearly. It was like being at the DMV. Like you sit down, you wait, in the line, and my dad needed this thing and they didn't have it. And he knew they had it, they just didn't care. And he went full on Karen in the whole place. He was like, I'm pissed off. You said this would be here. When I come back, this better be here. I'm so blah, blah, blah. And I mean, he made sure that this person was extremely publicly uncomfortable,
sure.
and he was seething and the steam was coming out of his ears. And we walked out the door and he goes, watch, they're going to have my thing in a half hour when I come back. His anger was gone because it was just a means to an end. His
Yeah.
anger was, he was not angry. He knew this is what it took to get this type of person in this type of environment, this type of attitude to get him. The ends justified the means. You know what I mean? He was not pissed, but he certainly looked like it when he walked in. And so that was very much Gary Halbert was I mean, I'll tell you one other tiny story everybody kind of loves is that I was a teenager. He had just gotten out of Boron. He came up to me and he said, Kevin, if you could have any car in the world, what would you get? And back then I said, and this was back then, so it was a dated car, is I would want a Ferrari Testarossa. And if you ever seen a Testarossa, they have these big long fins in the door to like cool the brakes and stuff. And he said, okay, within reason. I said, I would like a white convertible Mustang. And the next day he showed up and he said, check out my new car. And it was a white convertible Mustang. And I had no idea because my dad didn't care about cars. He always made someone else drive him. We drove his Rolls Royces. He would sit in the passenger seat, drive his Cadillacs, drive his Rolls Royces, drive whatever it was. He didn't care about cars. Cars were nothing like, oh, wait till Betty sees me in this car, right? It wasn't like that. And what I hadn't figured out for years later was he would say, Kevin, if you go do this, you can keep the car right? And he knew he could get me to go get him Kentucky Fried Chicken. He could get me to do anything he wanted because he knew my weakness, and I handed it to him on a silver platter. And he
Uh-huh.
read, yeah, that was a constant thing. And the thing was, we had the real. There was a thing called a Motorola Brick, which was a cell phone. Everyone thought I was a drug dealer because I had this big, massive cell phone, and they were 40 cents a minute to talk on the damn thing. And they called it the leash. So my dad had me have the car, but he had a phone so he could reach me at any second and have me go do something for him. Do you know what I mean? And
Sure.
we put cell phones in all of his cars. And I was like, I want a cell phone in the car. I want the little squiggly pigtail in the back so everyone knows I got a cell phone in the car. And he wanted me to have this freaking brick that would like pull my jacket down because if I put it in my pocket, because I didn't want to look like a drug dealer, but everyone thought it was. But the whole point was, he knew he could only get a hold of me if I'm sitting in the car. But if I had the brick with me, the leash, as him and Paulette called it,
Yeah.
he could have me go anywhere and do anything at any time. And it was more important for him to have me have this very expensive cell phone for him to have it, and I remember him running multiple phone calls. We'd be going down the 405 freeway and he'd be talking on the cell phone that's built into the car and then talking on this big old brick. And, it was just blah, blah, blah. But anyhow, so yeah, life with my dad was very chaotic. Going on a boat with him was very chaotic. I'm glad we survived this time, kind of thing. We were always ran out of gas, ran aground, got the top of the tuna tower cut off by the bridge, you name it, that was it. So I hope that's enough of an answer for what it was like growing up with Gary Halbert.
Yeah,
But yeah,
that's good.
it was never dull. You would never say, "Oh, he was just the typical dad." It's like he couldn't be farther from the typical dad. So,
Right on.
but
Yeah.
we lived large. We lived very large, and he was very generous. But when he wanted something, he got it. So there were frustrating times. Yes.
Yeah. You talked about like talking somebody to get the library book. I just
Hmm.
brings to mind the coat of arms book that he got from the reference
Mm,
library. And I think he
exactly.
asked like some 30 times to check it out over a course of hours before they finally agreed to let him walk out with it.
Exactly. Exactly. And he did that. He did that with the Robert Collier letter book. I think he probably did it with scientific advertising. Yeah.
I got
And
mine over there.
right. And yeah. That he when he set his mind to something, he got it. And so yeah. So yeah. And information back then, that was where the gold was. He was a voracious reader. I mean, and he was a voracious reader of fiction books like Tom Clancy or John D. MacDonald or any of these other things. And that was, people don't understand that that's part of what made him great, was not that he was reading just Claude Hopkins and stuff. It was that he was reading fiction. And fiction, if you look at a Gary Halbert, all the people that to reach out to us and they fall in love with my father, even though he died 20 years ago. And they always say the same thing. I never met your father, but by reading his newsletters, I felt like I knew him. Well, that comes from storytelling. That doesn't come from some copywriting, call to action or scarcity ploy. That is being able to, and he was so voracious that he would, I mean, his, how like sometimes maybe like my girlfriend's favorite place is the Container Store, or mine might be Home Depot, right?
Sure.
That's our mecca. His mecca was the bookstore, and he would. I mean, it was just that was just. I mean, he it just always a pile of books that was coming out. But the funny thing was, he was so impatient, and that was one of the things that he has a skill. That being impatient is a skill. To say fuck it and do it anyways and do it now. It had its consequences sometimes, but people don't understand that if you look at highly successful people, they have an impatience. They know when to do it. But anyways, the whole point was he would all the books he bought were hardbound. Those cost 20, $25 a piece for each of those
Mhm.
hardbound books. And he would just buy it. And I mean, he always like folded the pages in half. So he never used a bookmark. You pay this money, you get a dust cover and a dust sleeve, and you got this thing. And I mean, he treated them like they were nothing. And that book was read once, and then it was just thrown in the trunk of a car. You ran to the library and you scooped up this whole freaking trunk that was lowering the back of the car and giving it to the library, and he was off to not buying the next set of books. And when they tested him in prison, his vocab was off the chart. But he always used a big word if you used it. Like if you used a big word, he would respond to that or use that big word back again. But other than that, he was back to a fifth grade level of communication. He knew that stuff, but he didn't talk like, I mean, he had his redneck um, West Virginia hillbilly roots, where, he was just very, yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm going on a little too much, but anyhow,
All
um,
right.
yeah. So, yeah. But if the thing is, people could teach the same thing Gary Halbert teaches, but he would still rise to the top in the sea of people that are gurus and marketers and Me Too people, copycats and all that stuff. Why? Because none of these people can write a story. They can't write an engaging tale. The other thing that made him great was that he bared his soul. You know what I mean? A
Sure.
lot of
Yeah.
these other people, they just want to look flawless all the time, or they want to. Now, he was very, 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 very offensive when you were alone with him, but he knew when not to put that in an ad, not to put that in a newsletter. And it was never that he was mean or whatever. He just kind of liked just being raw. You know what I mean? And he loved that dynamic of being raw. But yeah, I mean, if you look at some of the things Gary did, a lot of people would have had caution about saying that, writing that, doing that, whether it was about himself or somebody else, yeah. So what I'm just trying to say is those differences are the difference that make the Gary Halbert letter or his newsletters or his teachings of the same subject memorable, engaging, addictive. I mean, most people that read those letters, they'll stay up all night, having a full-on session, going through as many as they can.
Yeah. When I first
Yeah.
came across him, I was absolutely hooked.
Yeah.
Just so thrilled with it. There's a totally different, this was before I got into copywriting, and it was
Mhm.
just a completely different look at advertising and
Mhm.
sales that I had never considered before. And it drastically, greatly influenced my career. Like I changed careers completely, from
Yes.
AIDA to copywriting, not just because of Gary, but that was a huge introduction for me. Yeah.
And it's very
So
different than
go ahead.
traditional writing. It's very different than traditional advertising. But
Yeah.
anyway, that's all I wanted to say is that that's why it seems so different and new to people is because it's very different than this clever marketing. Do you know what I mean? Like I watch these like freaking product commercials. I'm like, really? That's that's the way you're gonna sell this? You know what I mean? Or I don't want to get political, but if you look at the Jaguar commercial, right? I don't know if you've
Yeah,
seen the
right now.
Jaguar commercial, but that's like that's a don't blame us because we've had to recall all the cars because the batteries are catching fire. You know what? Let's make it this, and then everyone will think this is how we screwed up. You know what I mean? Because you can fix some bad social move, but the fact that your cars are catching fire, like I don't want to go too much, but I used to own a Pontiac Fiero. Okay, Pontiac Fiero was this little two-seater mid-engine car. They were like loved by people, but it was the only affordable thing. But it was like a little tiny sports car. I like tiny sports cars. I own a Miata. John Carlton loves them, But the whole God, I lost my train of thought. The thing, and I do that. I lose my train of thought all the time. The
Right.
thing is, that car had a throttle body that leaked. It like had a bad gasket and would leak fuel onto the exhaust manifold, and it would catch fire. Okay, they fixed that problem. But the Fiero, every time everyone knew I had one or heard about one, all I could talk about was how these cars catch on fire. But that
Yeah.
problem had been fixed in the next model, but it was with them for the rest of the reputation of
Mm,
that model.
mm.
And so when you have Jaguars catching on fire, you bet they're going to run some campaign that is a wag the dog moment. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
let's do
Yeah.
this. Everyone will be afire about this. We can call them names and tell you blah, 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 and all this other stuff. We will just make a circus over here so you don't see these burning cars and batteries over here. You know what I'm saying? So anyhow, I'm getting a little over the top. But anyways, okay. And
Go
that's
for it.
that's a theory of mine. I'm not saying that's a fact, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't
And
know
they
what
keep,
happened in their CEO meeting, you know?
Jaguar keeps saying,
Yeah.
just wait, just wait. So we don't know what they're doing yet, but
No,
not
the only
semi.
thing I can say is all I can say is somebody who loves Jaguar, because Jaguar is owned by India, right?
Oh,
And they're probably looking at America going, we don't know what you guys do over there. We'll just pay an ad agency to do something. And, because none of your culture makes sense to us. Do you
yeah,
know
it
what I'm
doesn't
saying? And
to me.
so, uh, yeah. So anyways, it'll
All
figure
right.
itself out.
I'd like to jump back real quick
Sure, sure,
to, and maybe you kind of covered this, but then I want to move on past your
sure,
dad and talk about you.
sure,
Real
sure,
quick
sure.
though, before his famous coat of arms letter really took
Mhm.
Gary's career to a new level, what
Mhm.
was he learning from and what kind of work was he doing? Was he writing sales copy that was just kind of not doing so great until he had his gun to the head
Okay,
concept?
so his path to that is a couple things. One, he just loved persuading people, so that was built into him. Okay,
Okay.
but he used to literally sell encyclopedias door to door. Okay, he also worked for Pitney Bowes, and I think mm, it was a Shell or Standard Oil probably. Um, um, but the thing is that there's a skill that people don't understand. People sit around and they have an idea. I'm going to sell this thing. I'm going to write some sales copy. I'm going to do all this other stuff. You know what I mean? And they never think of cheating. And cheating is going up to people and talking to their face. It's like that's the worst thing in the world. Oh my, and can you imagine the feeling of going up and knocking on doors and selling encyclopedias? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like people, telemarketing or whatever it is. It's like that's almost an anxiety invoking thing. But if you can get past that and start having a dialogue with humans, when the coat of arms happened, nobody I know would have ever thought of doing this. He walked up to doors, and said, "Oh, did you get my letter? What did you think of it?" And when he heard objections or he got information, they were never going to bother to write them back and go, "Hey, I hate, you have bad English. This is, you don't know anything about my whole family last name and, how we were blah, blah, blah." But the whole point is that people don't do enough of going and asking their target market and getting in a conversation with them. We had a whole presentation about that. Caleb O'Dowd was very successful. They were finding out that these men didn't have erectile dysfunction when they were selling Viagra. These men were no longer attracted to their wives. And even when I heard that, I didn't believe it. And now I'm like, oh, this is true. And you're not going to have any revelations about marketing. Because if you run around and assume that everyone is like you are killing it's like, I don't know if you've ever talked to somebody and you find out that they're opposite side of the political aisle. And you're like, I'm so surprised. I thought you were sane. I thought you were a sane person. I didn't know you were nuts, right? And the thing is that there's two people that look the same that are worlds apart in some views of the world. And if you don't know that, you can't speak to them. So, so anyhow, the long story short is he was a door-to-door salesman. But one of the things he had was this guy who was very clever and very smart. And they do this in the military, by the way. Um, this guy was a door-to-door salesman, and he would get some appointments, and he would take my dad, and he would tag along, right? And my dad would just sit and watch this guy close these people. He'd just keep closing them and closing them and closing them. And what they would do is it would wait till the point where you were over, like my dad was pent up, like he wanted to say it. He wanted to say the script. He wanted to close the deal and do that stuff, until, and then, you have it and you feel it and you've internalized it, and actors call it, I think, being off script. And they do that in the military. Like they'll sit there and plan a beach invasion, and they deliberately put these guys on these vessels and transports, and they leave them sitting there bored to death for 2 or 3 days on purpose. So they're just pent up. So by the time they go, they just storm the beach. You know what I mean? And so, but in any case, yeah, doing that door to door and seeing a person. And there's the thing when you're doing that and you're selling them and you look at them, there's a moment when you see a light switch change. And that moment is there's a person that's like, okay, just can you finish talking so I can close my door so I can just get out of here? I can make an excuse. I don't know. My spouse is at home. I have to talk to him, blah, blah, blah. But there's a switch where they become interested. And that thing is there's two valuable things. You get to see that switch, but you also remember what you said that was that switch. And one of the indications that that switch has happened is anybody who's trying to get rid of you won't ask you a question. And if someone starts asking you a question about what you're selling, you know that. And so you see this transformation that you cannot behind a keyboard figure out what is it, when is that moment? When did I get them? When did they start getting interest, stuff like that. So, yeah, okay. So just a little bit quickly is, my dad became interested and he started working with a guy named Thomas Hall. Thomas Hall, see, my dad was a door-to-door salesman, right? And he probably read all his letters, but he realized he could only knock on about 13 doors an evening, right? To try to sell them encyclopedias. But if he could write a well-written letter, he could knock on millions of doors, right? And that's when he spent the 18 months writing the coat of arms letter. And so, but the thing was, the person that gave him that click, oh my God, I could knock on a whole bunch of doors, was this guy named Thomas Hall. And Thomas Hall wrote something called the Direct Mail Guides, and it was how to do direct mail. And he was the guy that was one of the inspirations for writing things out by hand. And all these people think, oh, I can bang it out with typewriter. I can AI print out this, whatever this crap is. They don't get that writing something out by hand is it's not a it's so that it passes through your thought and becomes part of you. You can still handwrite stuff and copy stuff that you don't, like when you drive home and you don't remember the whole drive because you're obsessed with something was on your mind. You can copy stuff and never get it. But if you're in the mood, this becomes a part of you. It gets encoded in your DNA and stuff like that. And so Claude Hopkins became the thing. And then he met Dennis Hasslinger. And Dennis Hasslinger was the one that let him fail for 18 months until he got it right. And then that, obviously caused the flood of success that he had. And one of the best things about some marketers and copywriters, sometimes they forget their successes, and I do that too. But if you have a big winner like that, you never forget that you can write a winner, right? I guarantee you, Gary Benzavenga, Gary Halbert, everyone, they write losers. They all
Sure.
write losers. But there's something that switches in your brain when you know you've written a blockbuster, right? Unless you're in some kind of mental decline, that changes your confidence and your belief in yourself, that you can this you don't hit a home run every time, but you know you have the ability to get the ball out of the park if you strike it right. So yeah, and then he took off, and then obviously Dennis went sideways. That whole relationship went sideways, and then my dad started writing a bunch of other stuff, terrible ads like the radio ad for weight loss, but and then yeah, I mean I could go way into the anthology about him, what led to Boron, which he was really an innocent man, and the funny thing was I think he said that yeah, most of the people in there are guilty. But my mom is one who will speak the truth no matter what. And she's like, yeah, your dad was innocent. That was just that was just a witch hunt. Um, but anyhow, so yeah. And the thing is, I would recommend that everyone read Claude Hopkins, like maybe yearly. And I got to the point where I recorded a version of it so I could listen to it because I'm more of a listener person. But that book can re-energize anybody. You know what I mean? It's like, oh my God, yeah, you're right. I could test it. I could test it cheap. I could test it a million different ways. When it wins, I can go big. That testing is yeah, I could test 20 different appeals and approaches. Now the
Mhm.
gatekeepers have changed because I've talked about EAIDA. So AIDA is attention, interest, desire, action. The big players, it's like in the gold rush, the people that sold the shovels were the ones that made the money.
Mhm.
Right? The people that make the money in marketing advertising are what I call the E, which is the exposure. That's the newspaper, that's the social media group.
Mhm.
Those guys are making the billions selling the exposure. They have the eyeballs. That's why they are fighting for time on site, right?
Yeah.
Because that's engagement, blah, 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 blah. That has changed. And that one thing has messed up a little bit of marketing because they're making rules that change your copywriting, what you can say, how you can say it, where it goes, who sees it, stuff like that. That's why I think direct mail, I've been saying this for a while, but I still believe it. Direct mail will be coming back in because there are no censors. Nobody's approving this stuff in and out. You get to say what you want, you know, and it reaches that person.
Yeah.
And the price of marketing to people online has gotten so expensive that direct mail is actually affordable. You know what I mean? Like, you see Shark Tank and all these people copying Claude Hopkins. Everyone's got the algorithm. It's like, okay, what's your customer acquisition cost? All the stuff we've been talking about for years are now in the general lexicon, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I would
Yeah.
say that
Yeah.
direct marketing has certainly come on its own since social media and quick and easy testing online is
Yes, yes. But
data
but
backed.
I'm telling you, you need there's always the creative side and there's a tech side. So even in the smallest business, there's usually two people, right? And the thing is, it's a moving target to you need a guy who knows how the game is played on the inside of Google ads or Facebook ads or Instagram or TikTok or any of those other things. And so the thumb is on the scale a little bit on that stuff. Um, so anyhow, yes. Sorry, I get a little long-winded.
That's why we're here. It's all
My
good.
my tea and my thing.
Sounds good. So you said that a minute ago, you said that, in any small enterprise or business, there's probably going to be a creative side and a technical side.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
what business are you in now? And which of those two roles might you be filling?
Unfortunately, we're both.
Okay.
I'm both. A guy we are now working with is both. A guy that called me when he was down and out and homeless and living in his car, and um, he started working with us, and um, I think he was just surprised that I took his phone call and listened to him and give him advice, because he probably felt like the whole world was shutting him or something like that.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I mean, we're not trying to be the um the big guru out there. And in some senses, some people have decided that they're going to be the next Halbert guru. sometimes regurgitating our dad's stuff and stuff like that. But we're not out there, we're thinking about doing it again, but we're not out there pacing the stage. We've done our stage presentations. We've gotten the audiences, to do all that stuff. We're more of a, let's do some work, make some money, and enjoy life. Whereas some people, like my dad or this other guy I was talking about working with, are workaholics. And the best part is they love it. You know what I mean? And so it's not work to them. But for us, it's we're doing good, but we're not going to break ourselves, 40, 60 hours a week trying to do that stuff. But it has taken a while because um, unless you're, look, I don't want, two things that I'm not a fan of the words of launch, product launch, and affiliate marketing. Those two. And if you want to make it big, those things are the things you got to do. Do you know what I mean? I remember there's this guy, he wanted us to uh, go speak in Australia. And I,
Real quick, when you
sure,
say
sure.
we, you're talking about yourself and your brother Bond.
Me and Bond. Sorry, yeah.
Okay.
So we wanted to go to speak in Australia. Okay. And I didn't, I had just gotten a girlfriend at the time. We were just kind of hanging out intensely together. My brother had his family. Um, and the thing is that neither of us, he wanted us to do it. We didn't want to do it. So what we gave him was what we would call a go away price. We gave him a high number and said, this is the deal. You want us, this is what you're going to pay us to fly to Australia and do this thing, right?
Uh-huh.
And
Checks in the mail.
uh and but the thing was that price was if he said yes, it'd be so high that it'd be okay. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I called Bob back. He said yes. Sorry, so I guess we're going to fucking Australia, right? Sorry, I don't want to cuss on your group, but we're going to Australia, and doing all that stuff. But when we were there, the guy said, "Well, what do you want? What do you want to do? What do what is it your dream? And stuff like that." And my dream was always to do kind of okay. I call it the Chuck Berry thing. Chuck Berry, he's a black, rock and roll musician back in the 50s, getting screwed and ripped off left and right by promoters and all this other stuff.
Mhm.
And then he made it very simple and very binary. And the Who did this during the Woodstock concert, which was Chuck Berry said, "This is the deal. Okay, I've got a simple beat. You can get a rhythm section, all this other stuff. This is the deal. I show up at the event with my guitar and a gunny sack. You hand me a bag of cash. I walk on the stage. I play. I leave." Right? And the Who did this. They were like, they had to get in a helicopter, fly the promoter to the bank, get them to open the bank on a weekend, get them their freaking cash because the Who wasn't going to go on the stage at Woodstock unless they got paid. They've been down this road before. And so I always wanted the Chuck Berry experience, which is I just walk on, I do my thing, and I walk off. I don't want to be, doing and I end up doing all the tech, by the way, a lot of the tech. And that's because I've tried hiring other people and working with them to do video editing, web hosting, you name it. Their skin's not in the game. They, like I'm like Gollum with our list. Practically Bond almost doesn't have access to our email list. Not, and he does. I'm overdoing it. But for years, I was like I had the launch codes. You know what I'm saying? Because I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
so protective of that. You know what I mean? And but I so can't count on anyone to do it the way I want that I end up doing that. But I would rather just be the creative. I would just go, be Gary Halbert, you pay my room and accommodation, my flight, my blah blah blah. I come on, I talk, I leave. But that's not how life works. We do it all. If we wanted to go large, and have somebody franchise and all that stuff, we could do it. But then you got a whole circus going, right? And
Yeah.
I don't want a circus. So we're kind of small by design, but we have said recently we want to go for it. We want a lot more money. We want a lot more. We want more things, so we have to go bigger. But for the most part, we just don't. Yeah, we don't want to be the big guru thing, but we may end up doing it now. We may be going on stages and more. I'm on this podcast. Bond's the one that usually ends up on the podcast because he's the social one. I'm the one that's in the background. secret
Yeah.
working the stuff. But when you get me talking, I'm an introvert, but when you get me talking, then you can't shut me up. So
That's all right.
yeah.
Funny.
I don't know if I answered your question or not. So
Yeah.
I get it. I get down on.
Yeah. So, so you're in the marketing game still, and
Mhm.
you're more than just marketing the Halbert name. Is that what
Um,
you have your
no,
own ad agency or something?
no. We have a membership site, Facebook group called Halbertising
Yep.
in Facebook, and you pay a very small monthly fee to be a member of it. And I tend to talk a lot, and I tend to actually wear the group. I answer. I don't act like you got this 15 minutes to tell me, and then I'm going to go backstage and be in the green room where you can't be, and you know what I mean. I tend to help everyone till they're exhausted. You know what I mean? And
That's great.
so yeah, and we've had people. We Most people have a 3 month retention. We have like years. People stay with us.
Yeah.
But that's fun to do because a bunch of people come to us with the different problems. And the one thing I remember when my dad first died, we would go to these masterminds. Everyone invited these, everyone seems to brag about how expensive their mastermind, not how good it is, but how much you have to pay to be a member of our world's most expensive mastermind. And I went to all of them. Do you know what I mean? I was on flights and all this stuff. And I remember I never had much to say, but that was because my dad is such a monster in this business. You know what I mean? And I won't talk about too much about it, but I remember going into this one meeting. I said, fuck it. I'm tired of being timid. I have a whole bunch of freaking opinions. And I said, I said to Bond, I said, we're going to go in this room and we're going to blow these people away. And it was just that switch that happened in my brain was exactly the moment it happened. I went in the room. I said, fuck it. This is what you need to do. Blah, blah, blah. And the room was just like, wow. You know what I mean? And I remember doing that once at a Jay Abraham thing. Me and Jay Abraham were palling around for a few months back in the day. And Jay always moves on. But he was at his event and he had these people pay a bunch of extra money to stay an extra day and pick his brain on stuff. And I somehow got the balls to interrupt him and say to this person, what you should do. But I mean, the nice thing was I said, what you need to do is what Jay said here. So I wasn't just throwing a Halbert thing out in promoting me, but I was promoting, because Jay's forgotten more than anyone will ever know about marketing and stuff.
Sure.
And I was like, oh shit, I can't believe I said that. But everyone loved the freaking ideas. They were following me out in the hall, trying to pick my brain and all this other stuff. And Jay came out and said, good job, good job. I was like, I
Yeah.
wasn't trying to upstage him or anything. But the thing is, yeah, I mean, so being paid all that money to fly to Australia and you speak for, I think it was a 3-day event, and walking into all these masterminds and helping all these people out. And it's because the thing is, it's a lonely world until you get out there and then you blow people away and you're like, shit, I actually do know some shit that's not just everybody knows that. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, I would rather, and, and writing sucks. I mean, but I do it and it's, writing is crafting and writing is rewriting and stuff like that. Um, the difference is Gary would do it in a single session, but what they didn't know was he had been writing it for weeks. And I was in his head and it was a loop, you know what I mean? It was kind of like you're trying to ram a hole in the wall and each bit you still go through this part you ran through before, but you're a little deeper into the, substrate until you're all the way through. And his brain would have that whole pitch worked out. And what people don't understand is that because he didn't write it down, he wasn't locked into those words. It was still a little amorphous. So you know what I mean? He didn't have to work with what he had already said. And so his brain would work out the whole pitch in his head. Then he would sit down and the thing was the writing wasn't in his, you know, I mean, he did do edits and rewrites. I mean, if I look at all his old legal pages and stuff, yeah, he had rewrites. But for the most part, like I remember he used to talk about how he used to get mad at people who'd ask him what type of word processor used. You know what I mean? Or these people are too good to use a pen and paper to rewrite the ads and stuff. And they don't get that the word processor has nothing to do, with whatever it is. And so what they don't understand is that when it came to writing it down, the ad was already written. It wasn't being written as he wrote it down. It was already written. He just had it in his head, thought about the appeal, had a total conversation in his head. But he took whatever he knew about the prospect and their hopes and dreams and fears and wishes and added that and wrote through that lens. You know what I mean? Whether it was
Sure.
having shiny teeth or Viagra or uh, um, yeah, I mean, anything's, perfume, and the thing was, well, he knew there was a bigger thing at stake. Like, I don't know if you've seen the old Listerine ad. It's always a bridesmaid, never a bride,
Oh yeah. Yep.
right? So it wasn't about getting clean, fresh breath that was healthy, right? Her whole future is at stake.
Yeah. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Like her marriage, she's gonna be a spinster, right? Blah 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 by Listerine, right? Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
so great marketers and copywriters know, right? And you know who's really good at that? Gary Bencivenga. Gary Bencivenga is really great at that and his intros and stuff. Well, I mean, even now that he's selling olive oils, it's like this is what's at stake. In other words, this is what's at stake. So this is why you need to read this now. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. The halitosis ad. They
Yeah.
made up a word for that. I mean, they made it up for the marketing, as far as I understand it.
Maybe they could have. I mean, yeah. I mean, they had that whole thing where you smell your thing, but you're really smelling your hand, or Kleenex became a name, or yeah, yeah, it's not quite exactly related, but yeah. So yeah, they could invent that. I mean, I don't know if you remember. You're not old enough to remember a thing called Looky Loos, which was just another name for a tire kicker. It was a real estate commercial.
Oh
Like,
yeah. Okay. I
oh,
get that.
here's the Looky Loo, right?
Yeah.
Oh, what about all these looky, and I don't know what real estate thing they were selling, but they invented a word that became common in American, yeah, uh,
Yeah.
things. So yeah, I mean, yeah, you get, that's jingles, that's everything. Yeah.
That's kind of a like creating or finding a new angle for a
Mhm.
big idea that you can then, connect people's desires or fears to it, right?
hmm
Um,
Yes. Yes. But I saw in your list of questions, one of the things is like, what do people get wrong the most?
yeah,
They don't do their research.
yeah,
They don't do the research. They don't understand their customer. They don't. And I can tell you a couple things. Some of the things that people kind of get, uh, like you have certain things you say and the people, do you know what I mean? And one of the things I used to say, people go, wow. And it was true. And I had forgotten I'd even written it, which is that you need to write as if your reader needs to pee, right? And that like, ooh, light bulb, light bulb. But the thing is that sometimes you tell somebody something and then they get it, and then they're further along in their thing and they're like they get it on a deeper level, and they see it across again, they get it on a deeper level. And one of the things I try to tell people, and I can hardly sell it, that they don't get, is that um, is that what's most important in marketing is knowing what your prospect needs to hear in order to buy. Now, buy is could be any call to action, vote, call, right, blah blah blah. But you need to know what they need to hear, and that sounds very simple. That's critical. But nobody's like, wow, like, you know, right as if you're reading these. No one, like their heads don't explode with the, yeah. And if you don't know what to write in order for them to buy, you haven't done enough homework. You either have the wrong product or you have not done your homework. That's it. But and that's what Gary Halbert knew. He knew what a person needed to do for him to get them to go get him a bucket of chicken and use the car, or to do anything. He first needed to know what they needed to hear, whether it was walking in the Ma Bell or anything else. He knew what they needed to experience for that conversion to happen. But people just sit down and think they're going to be clever, they're going to apply somebody else's marketing strategy or anything else, and they've totally divorced themselves from understanding what that person needs to hear. And some people will test the lines, oh, this will cure your cancer, or whatever it is. But the thing is, whatever it is, you better know what they need to hear. And people don't I mean, they do, they value it, and people repeat it to me, but they don't, let me put it this way. I don't think they get it on the level that they need to get it on to understand that when you know what they need to hear to order to buy, the copy's written itself, right? So, you know, there's like the famous lies, lies, lies ad,
Mhm.
and stuff like that, right? That person tuned into what these people really think about people who are selling financial newsletter and advert, services and stuff. He tuned into the fact that they're cynical. That was nobody else was writing that or get rich slowly, right?
Those were those both Makepeace or maybe ones
Uh,
of manga?
I I don't know. I mean, there's so many. I
Yeah.
mix up the
I
authors,
mean, yeah, but there's
but
no
those.
there's no benefit. There's no, they're tapping into somebody's at least in the lies, they're tapping into the investors like being fed up with
Mhm.
what's going on. They're not, it's not like a benefit driven headline or a
No, but
urgency or anything like that. Yeah.
but what they're doing is they're getting in sync with their attitude, their perspective, their thought process. If you come at the opposite end and say, no, it's not all lies, it's all great, it doesn't work. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying?
Mhm.
And it, people don't, yeah. So that, but those things were big blockbusters. And how would you do that if you didn't know what they needed to hear in order to buy? You're never going to write those headlines. That's
Yeah.
never going to happen. And so, I mean, and the thing is, if you want to know what people need to hear in order to buy, talk to them face to face, right? I mean, think about today's politicized climate. To sell somebody on something, depending on which side of the aisle on, you're going to have to say some different stuff to that person, right?
Yeah.
You're going to have to say something else. And so you need to know for this person, for this category, lifestyle class or race or sex or culture, or you know what I mean? Like you're going to say different stuff. If you're in a country that has a very different culture, it's going to be a very different messaging. Um, and so it's not always logic. And the other thing is, I'll say this, there's a great book called um, Wired for Story. It's written by this woman. It's about storytelling. But the thing was, they had these guys. They were doing a study. This guy had gotten, I don't know if he had a stroke or he had some brain damage or something like that. But he lost his ability to feel emotions.
Mm.
And because he couldn't feel his emotions, he lost his sense of what was a priority, whether it was doing his taxes, fixing his car, taking his medication, or alphabetizing his filing cabinet. And so the scientists had discovered that if without emotions, you don't have a hierarchy of what's important and what needs to happen. But the big take home from that is that every single decision you make is based on emotions. And so if you have different cultures and different religions and different everything else, your every decision is based on emotion, and you need to know how to talk to that emotion and the emotion that makes, like, here's an example. And this is another thing a lot of people don't get a big aha moment about. Okay. There's a um, let's say there's a guy that's sitting there and he's selling life insurance to a family, a father. Okay.
Mhm.
Uh, he wants to be the patriarch. He's traditional. He's going to take care of his family, right? And so he wants, if he's gone, they're going to not lose their house. They're not going to be out on the street. They're not going to be suffering and all this stuff. Okay. And you think you're selling him on preventing this future, this dark, this is for later. This is for if this ever happens. Okay. But when you're selling him on buying life insurance, you're not you're not selling him on how he'll feel about it if the house burns down or homeowner insurance or whatever it is. What you're selling
Mhm.
him is how he feels about it when he thinks about it right now.
Okay.
You understand that there's a big difference, that you are selling his emotions that he's experienced at the moment you're closing that sale, right? It's it's not somewhere in the future, that you have to talk to that emotion that he is visualizing. You are helping him visualize. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Sometimes I feel like I explain that stuff and some people don't get that you're not talking about their future emotions. You're talking about their present emotion that's making a decision in this moment right now. So,
So to do that, uh, I mean, so I understand what you're saying, but how would you go about that? Like if you wanted to tell a story to that person to say, if you die, your wife is going to be flat broke if you don't have something like this, right? That's, I guess that even if you're talking about a future story, that would drive their current emotions. Is that,
yeah. Oh, absolutely. Imagine going up to a friend and just start talking about how his wife might be cheating on him.
yeah.
Right?
Uh,
You can make him crazy, even though nothing in the future or is currently going bad. That will change every action, thought, and motivation that's going on in his head right now from a perceived or imagined reality. Do you see what I'm saying? Like if you
yeah.
sat down with a bar with your friend and you go, "Do you know where she is right now? Do you know where she was last Tuesday?" Blah 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 blah. Right? She could be totally devout, sitting at home, you know, doing whatever, or sitting with her, on vacation with her family. She could be doing nothing. But that whole imagination can make that guy, those emotions can make him change course. So
So, so a lot of writing, like especially in maybe electronics, like the Best Buy ad or something, talks about features. And then a lot of
Mhm.
copywriters say you got to turn features into benefits. But really it's more about the transformation and the outcome of those benefits. Is that
Right, right. So
accurate?
they're going to imagine what is okay, so when you buy a really hot car, okay. Let me put it this way. Here's another way of putting it. How awful do you like golf or anything like that? Okay, you like golf? Okay. How awful would it be if you hit a hole in one, and nobody saw it,
Sure. Oh yeah, that'd be terrible. I mean,
right?
I'm but
You'd want everybody in this, you'd want videotape, you'd want the Guinness Book of World Records, you want everybody to see this, right? I mean, because you're going to have these other guys that are going to be at the bar. Yeah, your fish was this big too. Sure, right?
Mhm.
Whatever the hell it is. And so I mean, if we only bought for practicality, right? We would all be in these boxy cars, right? That
Sure.
that get 40 miles to a gallon, take forever to get up to 60 miles an hour and stuff like that. But um, but feeling accepted and part adequate and keeping up with the Joneses, this is like pride, like self-worth and pride and all that stuff. I mean,
Mhm.
look, I mean, I on a group, I was kind of honest and we talked about how Victoria's Secret was about to get torpedoed. You know what I mean? And we were looking at what they were doing, who they were changing their representative to, and all this other stuff. And I said, well, if I had money to throw in the stock market right now, I would short this stock right away. I would short Jaguar right now because somebody's loving this. They're just like, I want it at the lowest price. I can't wait till this thing is even lower. So, how did I tell you, I lose my train of thought. Where was I going on about?
Well, I mentioned beyond features and beyond benefits
Oh,
is
right.
transformation. And
Mm,
you're talking about, yeah, the
right.
importance of the emotions
Okay.
behind that.
Sure. Now the thing is that, like I said, everything is based on an emotion, but you're like, I need to order a pencil. How is that based on an emotion? Right. And but it is. Trust me, it is.
I have my favorite pencils. No
You're
question.
right. 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 What are those black
Black
wing?
wings. I got
Yeah.
those in
Black wings. I have the
the color.
mechanical ones, right?
Nice.
I have, yeah. So the whole point is that it's farther away than you think. Like some things are right in front of your face. Okay, I'm not going to be able to get this girl. I'm not going to get that cash. Whatever those things. But when it gets down to doing stuff, well, it's like, well, I'm running low. What if I don't have any pencils to write with? What if I don't, have an idea? Um, or man, I know it just doesn't feel as good with these number two pencils that just have this weak ass lead that hurt my fingers. Do you know what I mean? And the last time I checked, they were out of stock, and it was going to take 12 months to get here. That's all the scarcity and FOMO and stuff, that we use to sell. Um, so, but the thing is, in those senses of certain things, it's just like I just wanted to do its job, right? And that's where you get a person that's clicking on the drop down and saying from low to high price, right? They just need a pencil. All it's got to do is make a mark, right? And then there's someone else that needs it to, I don't know if you watch Business Insider, but I mean, these people create these special pencils that have perfect gradients, and they're smooth, and they, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Um, so, um, the one thing I will say about what you're saying, which is kind of off what you asked, okay, is that like, like when I'm building something, like I've gotten into a little bit of home improvement working stuff and stuff, is I have DeWalt. And the thing was DeWalt and all those companies, when they went cordless, all of a sudden you had a monogamous brand buyer, right? Before you could have a skill saw, a Ryobi, rigid, you could, you know what I mean? But once you get into a battery system, right? And then your team, whatever. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
And um and the thing is that people want to belong to when they like something, they want to belong to that group, right? I mean, merchandising for sports teams, people get insane in their tribalism. I mean, we all try to act like we're modern human beings. And I mean, if this political environment doesn't show you that we're still insane, vulnerable to propaganda and all that other stuff. But I mean, I used to sail with this guy. We used to race on sailboats. You get on these, you race 50 other boats and see who can win what they call these beer can races. And one day I was sitting around and I just told him I was from Ohio. And he's like, oh, that's the worst. I've never seen a guy like look like I had slapped his daughter, right? Because he was from Michigan.
Okay.
Right. And I
Yeah.
could not believe the fact that I had done nothing. I didn't even choose where I was born. This guy was so downtrodden to find out I was born in Ohio. And, he just hated us. And I mean, I guess if you're driving in the other state with the wrong license plate, you're always getting pulled over and ticketed.
Oh
So if
yeah.
it's Michigan and Ohio, you're getting ticketed. And if you're Ohio and Michigan, you know, I remember there was some sports movie where some coach lost a game and they put all these real estate for sale signs on his lawn and shit. Um, and so, uh, and the thing is those people, the thing about it is those people want to belong, but they also get irrational, right? Anytime someone gets emotional or irrational, they become very vulnerable. Unless you go opposite direction, they become very vulnerable to a pitch, right?
Mhm.
So if a person has cancer, right, they you would be like, that's a quack idea. How can eating bananas and dipped in salt cure my cancer? But if you have cancer, you're going
We'll
to
try.
read every single freaking thing that can deal with that. If you have diabetes, if you have whatever it is, but and that's why the government goes after people that are um, um, vulnerable like that because they know the more emotional or vulnerable they are, the more susceptible they are to a sale or a con or anything else. And so,
Mhm.
um, but yeah, tribalism. I mean, I don't know, these kids with these Swifties and stuff. You know what I mean? It's a thing. And so, um, but that we all need to belong to a group, and that's coded in us for survival.
Sure.
Um, so anyhow, I'm steering this thing way off course. I apologize.
It's all good. It's great.
Okay.
All right. So let's bounce real quick back
Okay. Sure.
to your own list. You said that you heavily guard your own list.
Yes, absolutely. The money's in the list. Your whole business is in your list.
Money is in the list. So what
Yeah.
should people be looking for when they're digging through their list? I think a lot of people just have a list and they mail the list and they
I'm guilty of that. I only have a list and I dig in the list. So so I am not a segment guy. I mean, that this is not my strength. It's not my skill for analyzing the list. The I would think it would be different if we had a more um, diversified audience. Let's say I was Amazon or I was YouTube or well, maybe Netflix. Um, then you're going to develop a profile of somebody. Oh, this guy's fallen down into the rabbit hole of being interested in watches. This guy's fallen down into the rabbit hole of being interested in politics. This guy's fallen down the rabbit hole in woodworking or um, whatever, you know. And so even though I have this big universe of crafting and auto repair and all this other stuff, I'm starting to, you know, uh, to develop a profile of this person. The scary part, which is a diversion for what you were asking me, the scary part is that you can develop an avatar where you track their transition from this to something else, something radical, something that's more political, something's more whatever, right? And you go, this was the path. And then you can find somebody that has the same profile starting point, and you can expose them to all the same media and
Oh, that's
all the
crazy.
same things, and they can end up dropping out of the funnel being that thing. Because we do not choose what we watch.
Oh, big
We
tech.
enter a subject, and then they decide what to serve up to you, right? And so they can find the most persuasive, do you know what I mean, or addictive. Like the algorithm will, um, what you'll find is a person will go to many times more effort to keep something than to attain something,
Mhm.
right? And um, so one of the things, and you should read Wired for Story. Another one is The Female Brain. They're two brilliant books. But what you'll find is that when these companies are competing for time on site, okay, they find that fear and anger is far more consuming and addicting,
Oh, sure.
right? And they study that and they see that happens. And this person stays on site, gets exposed to more ads longer and this and that. Guess what we're going to do? These seem to keep people on our site longer, even though they take them down the rabbit hole of anger and frustration and despair. Let's feed them that.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
what works? You know, it's like uh, Rachel Maddow, right? They called her ratings Viagra. Well, that's both people watching and confirming and hate watching. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
It's right. And sorry, your question, why did I have to go down that road?
Oh, question was oh,
Uh,
about list selection or
sorry.
how you dig
Yeah,
into the
yeah.
list and
Oh,
what
right,
can you
right.
do?
So developing a profile. The thing is this, our person is pretty much developed. Do you know what I mean? Our person isn't very different. I mean, to discern someone that's obsessed with Gary Halbert, I mean, like, how many different flavors of Gary Halbert fans are there? Do you know what I mean? They're all kind of in the same thing, right?
Sure.
Um, so um, we have a little bit. Well, no, not really. Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm the best expert to ask about segmenting a list and developing a profile. Well, if they clicked on this, they're likely to say that. Not at all. And in
Mhm.
fact, I would accuse John Carlton of being the same. I don't know about Kennedy. Um, but I would just say if I would definitely do that differently if we had more diverse offerings.
Sure.
You know what I mean? But I just don't think uh, the things that people are interested is not diversified enough in our crowd. Um, um, yeah, I'm trying to think.
No,
Um,
that's fair. That's fair.
No. So yeah, I'll admit where my weaknesses are, and that's not, and someone will come out and correct me and say, "Are you crazy? There's a whole bunch of ways you should be using this algorithm on your list. And uh, yeah, no, from from the phone book, from the YouTube universe, from everything else, yeah, I would be algorithming the crap out of those spaces. I mean, that's where everyone is, you know. I would be segmenting them by age, it's gender, socioeconomic class. I'd be segmenting them by culture. I'd be segmenting them by religion. Um, you know, these people are all very, very different. But the one thing I would say that is interesting is I was giving some advice to someone that works with a wealth manager. And the one thing I would say is you could have two people, two wealth advisors that are on the total opposite side of a political spectrum. And if their opponent, the one they hate, who has their values they hate, makes them $5,000 more a year bottom line, they won't care.
Mm,
They will still go with this guy rather than the guy they like that will make them 5K less. Do you know what I'm saying? Sometimes, um, uh, there's just a truth that is undeniable. That uh, in other words, I mean, some people's values are for sale. Do you know what I'm saying?
sure. Yeah.
Right? It's like, I hate this, I love this, blah, 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 blah. All right, will you go with the other guy? Well, he makes less money. No, I'm not. I like $5,000 more than I hate this guy. That's what I will say. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Money is money, money. I mean, that's why people don't say things sometimes because they could lose their job, blah, blah, blah. But
Yeah.
the whole thing is that, you know, there's a reason that health and finance are the two biggest markets for direct response marketing, right? I mean, and tell me, you'll go to the best heart surgeon if he's got the opposite views of you. Do you know what I'm saying? So, so those things will only go so far. Um,
Yeah, that makes
so
sense.
yeah.
So obviously health, wealth, and relationships are,
Mm,
the big ones. But what other markets are out there that are just terribly advertised still to this day? I mean, I feel like the world's taken giant steps as far as understanding marketing and direct response
mm,
principles. So a lot of
right.
them are, these markets are more saturated and more sophisticated. But there's still certainly stuff out there that's just terrible that you see now and again.
Uh, yes, I almost anything that's just run as a like traditional commercial. Do you know what I mean? Like Jaguar or Uh, well, I mean, the stuff like that Prada did, you know, that I've seen recently, it's like, yeah, that works because those people are just buying. I One thing I will agree with is that brand repetition, either a jingle or just getting the name out there, really does have in its effectiveness. So we have a gecko selling Geico. We have Flow, which I hate, you know, or uh, Allstate or State Farm, all these other things. Those things are remember our name because you really don't know anything. There's nothing else to diversify it. You know what I mean? I mean, we
Mhm.
must be worth something if we must be pretty successful. We're spending this much money putting our name in your face every 15 minutes. You know what I mean? So I do believe that a brand awareness works when you don't have anything else to give yourself what do we call it? It's not a PSA.
USB.
USB, right. Yeah, when we don't have a USB. And the thing is this, I think they're probably pretty freaking lazy if they don't have a USB, right?
Sure.
And so, you know, anything that's not running a USB where you're just like running, look, if you have nothing to do, run a likability, no like and trust campaign. Do that. I mean, everyone should have a no like and trust campaign, but if you have more bullets in the chamber, do that. And so, yeah, I think all that marketing, I'm trying to think of some of the, um, I mean, me and my girlfriend, when we're driving to my mom's house on the weekends, we'll just laugh at the billboards. There's this billboard. We're going to photograph it, and it's these two guys kissing. We're like, well, they'll probably think it's because it's two guys. Then it was a couple kissing, and then it was like these two very old people kissing. But the whole tagline at the bottom of the billboard said, um, uh, "STDs are timeless." And I was like, what the fuck does that mean?
That's amazing.
STDs are timeless? What I mean eternal if you've got herpes or something, but I don't get what timeless, like, ooh, it looked like a freaking Hallmark card, you know what I mean? With all the pretty pastels in the background. Let me see if I've got it on my phone for my girlfriend.
That could be just some shock value there. I mean, that made me laugh.
No. I have just seen so much money wasted on some idiot creative that just got out of college with a marketing degree, thinking they are clever and smart. You know what I mean? I don't even, but the thing is, I don't even know what the CTA was for it. What was the fucking call to action?
Yeah.
What was it? Was it to go get tested? He didn't say go get tested. He didn't have like gettested.org or, as far as I don't remember. And if they did do it, they failed at me knowing it or remembering or knowing what the CTA was. It was crap. You know what I mean? Or you get these billboards that come by and they don't, I mean, the font, so, you have like 3 to 6 seconds to read a billboard. Do you know what I mean? And it's just, it's just ridiculous. So, I mean, there's a lot of marketing. Okay, so remember that guy I told you was down out, was calling me, he was homeless in his car and all this other stuff. And you know what piece of advice he said? What advice would you give me? And I gave him one piece of advice, and this is my dad's, inspired by my dad. And the one piece of advice I said is go find people whose marketing sucks and improve it. Okay. Now there's a couple things that looks like a simple sentence, doesn't it? So go find people whose marketing that sucks and offer to improve it. Okay. There used to be this old Lucille Ball episode where this guy, someone rings the door, she goes to answer the door, and this big clod of dirt flies through the air and lands on her carpet. Right? And this guy runs in with the Acme vacuum cleaner. It slices it, dices it, does everything. It cleans it, blah, 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 blah. And the salesman gets her and she buys it. Ricky comes home. We can't afford this. What are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. She's like, I'll sell it myself. Right? So what she does, she goes to the neighbor, knocks on the door. They open the doors. They throw the dirt clod in the air. And she doesn't realize that this person has no electricity. Right? Oh, this vacuum cleaner isn't going to sell, and she can't even clean the damn thing up. So finding a person whose marketing sucks and offer to make it better is someone who's tried marketing. They've been humbled by it because their marketing sucks. But they're a person that has some electricity, put some money into marketing, but they're also been humbled, right? And you go in and you offer to make them their marketing better. And that's a big difference than finding somebody who needs marketing. Right? It's like we have a saying that there is a world of difference between giving away something for free, like as a lead gen or a loss leader or anything else, versus someone who paid $1 for it. There is a world of difference between those two prospects. Okay? Right? The world is full of tire kickers. Someone that pulled out their credit card, took the chance of it getting stolen and filling it out and entering, is a world of difference than a person that just want something for free. And let me tell you, the people that pay for things, even if they can steal it or get it pirated or whatever, are a world of class different because their attitude is different. They're not trying to think of the shortcuts and the back doors and all this other stuff. They're putting their priorities in the right spot. But no, the people won't connect the fact that a person that pays for something is far better prospect, but is also far more likely to use it and execute it. And their focus isn't on the free. Their focus is on using the tool, right? People who get things for free don't value them. So
I definitely.
I mean, I could turn on the TV right now and just watch things come in, and I would just that sucks, that sucks, that sucks. All of these. I mean, in some of the message to market mismatch, I'm amazed at how much money some of these people raise or spend, and the algorithm is showing me stuff that is nowhere near in my wheelhouse of any of my watch history that what I would ever be interested in. But these very vague things, blah blah blah, the best innovation since blah 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 in, you know, something, and you're like, I don't know what that industry is. I don't know what that thing is. I get why medicine doesn't. They're not allowed to say what the disease is, so all they can do is get the name out there, and they can't tell you to get it. They have to say, ask your doctor if it's right for you. That's by constraint. That's by legal threat and constraint. But if they were allowed to say this stuff, yeah, I'll tell you this though, pharmaceutical companies are clever marketers. Okay. So like they'll have a heart attack medication, say blah, blah, blah. And what do? They show a guy in a single seat kayak sitting in the middle of a lake,
Okay.
right? So that scenario is like, when you get older or you have a heart attack or something like that, people, oh, you had a heart attack. Oh, we got to fix it. No, no, no. There's a whole litany of things you can't do anymore in your life, right? You can't go hiking anywhere. A helicopter, a life flight can't come get your ass, right? And all of a sudden, your life has all these limitations, or they have pictures of people with IBS or Crohn's disease, right? And now they're sitting in a toilet in their car, or even worse, they're closing the door to a plane, right? The seatbelt sign goes on. You know what I mean? And that's a very different reality to someone with Crohn's disease. And these people are very good at listening to, their life, what has taken the joy out of their life, and illustrating it visually, because they can't sell in other ways. They can't, you know what I'm saying? And so I do get the pharmaceutical companies considering the restrictions on there, and everyone thinks they're ridiculous, right? Everyone thinks these are ridiculous pharmaceutical commercials. And it's like, no, you don't understand. It's the rules that make these commercials ridiculous. The only thing they can do is get their brand going. They've got 18 years for the patent to hang on to, but but I swear half the commercials for pharmaceuticals, you don't know what the thing is for,
Oh,
right?
it's just a whole bunch of happy, smiling people with this
Yeah.
may cause death.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm drawing a blank on every example of terrible advertising, but it is everywhere.
No, I agree there. And I think the bigger the brand, the more they're maybe nervous or worried about misstepping or,
Mhm.
overstepping their bounds or something. But I would argue that a brand like Jaguar or Prada, they're not even trying to sell you what they have, because
No.
they already know. They're trying to sell you like an aspiration, like everybody knows it's an expensive car. Everyone knows it's an expensive car.
Right.
So if you can show up with that in your hand.
Right. Well, what they're selling is status, right? You're keeping up with the Joneses.
Exactly.
I was going to do a presentation, and my friend said, you better not do that, right? Because it was about the Jaguar thing. I don't know if you've ever seen, it's a Mel Brooks comedy. It was written, I think I was 1 year old when the first version came out. It was called The Producers. And
I'm not.
you never heard of The Producers?
I've heard of it. I have not seen it.
It's a very clever scam. What, it's a comedy. It's a musical comedy. But what it's about is this guy who's made successful plays before, has written a dud, right? And he's always trying to seduce these older women to get them to donate money to his next production that he's going to produce and stuff. But him and this accountant come up with this idea. It's like, oh, we lost $100,000. And the thing is if you get somebody to give you $100,000 to produce a flop, well, you lost $100,000. But if you have 10 people give you $100,000, you've taken in $1 million, but it's a flop and you've spent 100,000. You can show them the books and no one knows that you collected from 9 other people.
Sure.
And you made $900,000 and everyone thinks it's a flop and the books add up. You just don't know that everyone else had put in $100,000. So the play has to be a dud, right? So what do? They try to find the worst play ever, and they come up with this play called Hitler in Springtime.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Right. And they're supposed to do all this music and dancing and celebrating Hitler and all this other stuff. And in the end, the problem with the comedy is it becomes a big hit. So all these investors are going to want their freaking money. You know what I mean? And now you got to, 10 exit. So, but anyways, that's what I felt like with the Jaguar thing. Like we need to make it look like it tanked because of our ad campaign rather than our cars are on fire, you know.
Curious,
Um,
curious.
but there was another part of that that I was going to get into. Um, I forget now. I'm sorry. I do that a lot. So,
Quite all right.
all right. But anyways, yeah. I mean, with the Jaguar, yeah, you know, the world's most, the world's best brand is Aston Martin. Aston Martin is considered the top of the top of, you know, um, successful, like
Branding.
it's seen as prestige. It's the most prestigious badging is as the James Bond cars and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, when you buy a James Bond car, I mean, when a guy buys a James Bond car, like my mom lives in West LA, and West LA is full of the most self-absorbed, pretentious people you will ever experience, right? All, you know, they want to drive their fancy car and just act like traffic should stop around them, that they traffic laws don't make any sense to them or you know anything to them. And but you know, that is a certain shallow class of person that a lot of other people just don't buy into. And you know, I remember the funny thing was there was this old advertising company and it had oh God, he died of a brain thing. Dudley Moore. And they were running an advert, and this guy had like snapped and he started saying the truth. And his advertising took off. Uh, and the thing was their ad campaign for Jaguar was uh something like you can't have sex in it, but you will when you get home. Right, because
Okay.
it's such a
Yeah.
small car, you know,
Yeah.
and it just went, you know, and it was kind of like if you were being truthful in marketing, you know, and here these guys were being truthful. And the truth of the matter is, when you buy a Jaguar, you know, you're not alone on an island, right? You're thinking about, you know, like you know, they board planes in the wrong order, right?
First class first.
Right, first class first. What is that? So I can sit down and you guys can all walk past me. I'm better than all of you. To the back of the bus you go. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, those people want to be on first. They want the whole world to walk by them. They want the cute girl that's going to be in the back to know that they have first class. They want to, you know, uh, they want everyone to see them show up in that Jaguar. That Jaguar is not about getting from point A to point B as efficiently as possible. It is a whole other motivation, right?
Yeah.
That person you want to talk about splitting a list, a Jaguar owner versus a Ford Focus owner, very different. That's when you segment your freaking list, right? You
Sure.
segment by their economic strength, their education, their zip code, their you know, yeah, everything. Whether they're green, right?
Mhm.
You know that becomes a world of difference. And yeah, so
But it's almost
tell that
like
marketing.
the truth in advertising, you know, you'll have sex when you get home
Mhm.
is it's almost you can't even if there was an ad like that, you can't. Like people will buy it for that reason, but they're going to tell everybody else, oh, it's because the pickup will keep me safe in case of an oncoming
Right.
vehicle. Or, you know, they'll justify it to themselves and to others in a totally different way.
Well, the two perfect examples, the first perfect example, and the other one that makes it stronger is everyone that said they buy Playboy for the articles,
Yeah.
right? I mean, they and he and Hefner knew that, and he had the world's best articles. He really paid money to have the world's best articles. Why? Because it's a good excuse to buy the magazine. Ooh, I'm not looking at these hot women over here. They just happen to be in here. That's just a distraction, right? But
Yeah.
you want to talk about not understanding your customer? Playgirl.
Oh yeah.
Think
Totally.
about the avatar of Playgirl. Do you think that a bunch of women were buying Playgirl? No. You miss the mark, and you're going to miss it in your advertising. You're going to miss it in the articles, right? Everything. The people that bought Playgirl were gay men,
Sure.
right? And they probably also lied and said their name was Victoria instead of Victor when they signed up for their subscription.
Uh-huh.
You know what I'm
Okay.
saying?
Sure.
But you get how much you miss your market if you do not understand your market. If you have Playgirl, right? And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
you're writing about women's issues. You know what I mean?
Sure.
You're talking about talking to 10% of your audience, so you better get out there. You better find out who your customers, understand them, and yeah, do all of that. So
Very cool.
you're gonna miss the mark. You're gonna torpedo your whole business if you don't understand who your prospects are.
Yeah, that's essential. Which is, like you said, there how many flavors of a Halbert fan are there?
Not,
You got yours pretty dialed in. That's great.
yeah, yeah, yeah. My dad wouldn't segment his list.
Yeah.
I can promise you, my dad would not segment his list.
I
It's
mean,
they all have
starting
one thing in common. They're like
phone book.
it's
Yeah.
like yeah, no. Um, and the one thing that I see AI going everywhere, and it's kind of like Y2K. Oh, Y2K, blah blah blah. AI, it's going to kill copywriting. It's going to kill the data science. It's going to kill. I forget what the other one it was going to kill. And now you've got all these uh, illustrators and stuff
Mm.
the thing is, and it's like, no, AI is really good at imitating. And I mean, it can come up with these crazy, amazing visuals of, these psychedelic prompts you put in, and you can make a hot girl or a cute kitten or one of that other stuff, but they cannot knock off a Gary Halbert ad because
Sure.
Gary Halbert ad the next Gary Halbert ad doesn't look like the other Gary Halbert ads. It's got a couple elements to it. It's got the word amazing in it. It's got desperate in it. It's got a secret, or it's got a dollar bill letter with an explanation in it, right? But that
Uh,
also just goes with a framework. That just goes with a headline, a scarcity, a call to action, bullet points with some benefits and stuff like that. Those frameworks are there. But I guarantee you, Gary Halbert wouldn't be up at night wondering if AI was going to replace him. You know what I mean?
sure.
He's not going to be there. And the thing is, it's great. It's a shiny object to sell the world, and I do believe that it has its place. Like I think it'd be great for creating listicles, right? I mean, because that's kind of soulless stuff, right? And that's
Yeah.
what that's what that's what it can do. Plus, the thing is that I think it was Chat GTP was asked, which is worse, global thermonuclear war or misgendering Caitlyn Jenner? And it said misgendering Caitlyn Jenner was worse than global nuclear war.
Okay.
Right? So what that tells you
Yeah.
is that AI has got its moral thumb on the scale,
Oh, for sure.
right? And
Yeah.
so when you go in and do this stuff, this thing has got so many governors on it, so many guide rails that, and Gary Halbert, none of Gary Halbert's ads will look like it. So you've got all these things that, and the funny thing is, I think everyone's like, oh, and this was before AI came out. I'm going to have this bot write me blog posts and stuff like that. And it's like, how many blog posts do you think you're watching that are reading that are written by bots? Do you know what I mean?
I mean,
And
now it's only going up, I would imagine.
it's going up, but it's going nowhere, right? There's crickets probably going where all of this stuff is going. The thing is, the Gary Halbert letter, all right, the Gary Halbert letter is popular because it's got a soul.
Mhm.
It's got a character. It's got a flavor. It's got it's got um, something about it. So, it's a thing where people are going to all run a, it's like we worked with several people that were trying to develop stuff where they would do a framework of Gary Halbert stuff, uses sentences and his, closes or his power words and stuff like that. And I think all of that is great for a person that has writer's block. But I don't think it's great to just push a button, and just send it out, unedited or proofed
Mhm.
and I think um So I think AI has its place. It definitely has its place, but I just wonder if all the people that are selling AI had AI write the ad for selling them getting the AI thing. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean,
Curious, yeah.
yeah, I would be curious to see that because I'm sure some of them, just like a lot of people used to show these PayPal login amounts, you know what I mean? You're like, that was probably photoshopped, right? And nobody trusted any of that stuff, you know. But I just wonder how, you know, and they would have to almost brag and say, "Oh, AI just wrote this ad you just read," you know what I mean? But
Mhm.
and so, you know, a lot of those are friends, so I'm not stepping on their toes or anything, you know. But I'm just saying is that um, uh, that that Gary Halbert that's in that ad, I don't think the machine can do it just yet. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of people have to understand, you know, they'll go out there, they'll do this, and then they'll return. It's like someone that thought they were going to go get a better partner and they saw what was out there waiting for them in the world, and then they came back home. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
And
Yep.
I think people will return to an old school Benzavanga, Gary Halbert, or Makepeace, who, you know, who got up at at 5 a.m. before dawn, went down to the little shed where my dad sat down with his legal pad and crafted those things, you know, crafted these masterpiece letters. And so it's going to be an interesting thing. You know, maybe AI will get to the point and prove me wrong, but
I mean, it might. I don't have a ton of faith in it. I heard it
yeah.
called AI being average intelligence because basically what
Mhm.
it's doing is calculating the probability of what the next correct word is. You know, it's not thinking and it's not coming up with
Oh, are you talking about autocomplete or AI?
no AI in general. AI,
Okay.
like the way it works, at least my understanding is it sucks in information from all over the web and it
Mhm.
says, okay, after these three words, this is the most likely one to follow if you're want an article about tires or whatever it is, right?
Right.
So it
Right.
just
Right.
kind of it's just like an average of what could be written about for tires or something, you know, wrinkle cream, but it's not going to have like the unique angle, the mechanism,
Right.
the emotional impact. Even if you ask it to write it in an emotional way, it's not going to have the same thing that a real person writing it is going to be able to approach it. And certainly not everybody is able to write that way, you know, but
Yeah. And that's the thing is that Gary Halbert didn't look like, you know what, in AI, all it does is it's good at imitating,
yeah,
right? It's
yeah,
good at impersonating and imitating. But Gary was not going to do that. He was going to be something you never saw before. Nothing,
yeah.
you know, he's going to sell perfume different than anyone else who's ever sold perfume before, you know? And
Mhm.
I'm just trying, you know, and I don't know that AI understands the customer yet.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
oh, if it understands the customer and knows what they need to hear in order to buy, then we're screwed. We're all screwed. You know, we're done. But I think we're a ways out from that, if ever being a reality.
Yeah. Right on.
Okay.
Well, Kevin, tell us where our audience can find you.
Oh, well, we have two things. We have the GaryHalbertLetter.com,
Yep.
right, which has the word
Everybody go there,
in it,
please. Yep.
GaryHalbertLetter.com. That's where we put our dad's stuff up. It's still an older looking site, but we kind of try to keep it to his memory and stuff like that.
So valuable.
We do kind of update it a little bit. And then we have his products on a separate site called halbertising.com, which is called HALBERTISING.com. And that's where we have all our Halbert products, which is our ad breakdowns, our dad's content that he's created. And then we have a Facebook group called Halbertising, HALBERTIZING, and that's on Facebook, and that's our private group. That's something you have to hit us up privately, set up a subscription, and then we let you in, and then we have a ton of stuff in there from I think 4 or 5 years of members being in there and creating presentations and weekly copy critiques and marketing strategy sessions and stuff of that nature.
Is there like a work board or anything like that that, you know, connects writers and
Oh,
business?
like a copy board? No, we haven't really done that. Yeah, I mean, probably should. I mean, other people do it, and it's a very popular thing. I just think it's a beast to control. Do you
Oh
know what
yeah,
I'm saying?
imagine.
You know, so We should probably do it. We should at least, you know what? We've talked about doing it. I don't want to go on and on and on because I know we're closing this up. But um, yeah, we've talked about having a copywriter board of people that are members in our group that they can confirm that they're members of our group. And then we're not saying they're A-list copywriters or anything like that. All we're saying is they have a leg up because they're listening to us, stuff like that. So I'll remind Bond of that and that we started that. I don't know where he's gotten with that. So.
Very good. Well, everybody, thank you for joining us. Kevin, thank you so much for your time and insights and stories. And it was really fantastic.
Okay, good.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We'll see you on the next episode of the Persuasion Play podcast.
All right. Take care.
Hey, if you're a business owner or a copywriter and you're looking to earn more money, check out the resources at goldmine.marketing. It's all about direct response copywriting and direct response marketing, motivation and influence, and can help you raise your profits starting now. Check it out, goldmine.marketing. There's all kinds of interviews, book reviews, and lessons distilled from books there, all of which can help increase your profits. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to this video and check out the playlist for additional interviews. Goldmine.marketing. Thanks again. My name is Jeffrey. See you next time.